Hi, my name is Mel, and we're going to cover communism, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay, so I'm going to say where communism is one of those topics with the history, the theory, and real world outcomes diverge sharply. So, to keep things grounded and relatively neutral, I'm going to walk through the good, the bad, and the ugly, are described by historians, economists, political theorists, without giving too much in the way of personal opinions. And it's not about judging any individuals who hold left wing views. I'm very left wing. It's about explaining how communist systems have functioned in practice and how the ideology is understood academically. So, the good, according to supporters and theorists, equality is the core ideal. So, communism aims to eliminate class hierarchy. And I think in general that is a good thing because class hierarchy is destroying basically a lot of people. And it aims to eliminate extreme wealth inequality, which is also a good thing because we have massive wealth inequality and exploitation of workers. It's typically called an ideal society where everybody has equal access to resources, which in general is a good thing. So, two, communism, the good. Universal needs are guaranteed, so that could be in theory, the state should ensure housing, healthcare, education, and employment, and also anything else that they need, like electricity, stuff like that, and food. This appeals to people who feel capitalism leaves too many behind, which it does. Capitalism, I think, is a huge failure in my what the view is, because it does not work. It leaves, extreme inequality of power and money. So collective ownership. Instead of private ownership of any industries or major industries, resources are shared. And supporters argue that this prevents monopolies, corporate exploitation, and profit driven inequality, which it should prevent those, right? And it can focus community over individualism, which, look, depending on how you view that, can be a good, bad, or, something in between. So, communism can emphasize solidarity with each other and shared responsibility. And I think this is where, like, a bit more nuance needs to come in. Like, definitely, we should view communities trying to work together to help each other and, like, a shared responsibility to each other, but also have people who've got individual beliefs and views, but that everyone has to contribute and that we are all people joined together. So I don't think this is about, I'm definitely against authoritarianism, but having, like, I think promoting that despite our differences, that we can all get along and have a society that works for everybody is sort of like my personal ideal. So, bad, the challenges seen in real world attempts. So, it can lead to economic inefficiency. Central planning often struggles to predict supply and demand, innovate, and access resources effectively and efficiently. So, this has historically led to real world shortages, low productivity, and stagnation. Two, lack of incentives. When wages and outcomes are equal regardless of effort, motivation can drop. This has been documented in multiple planned economies. Look, but the thing is, so this is where we need to start re educating people about incentives. So, incentives shouldn't be about money you get. It should be about recognition that you've done something good to help people. So, we need to realign people's saying we're not going to get more money or more resources than someone else, but we're going to provide maybe a unique service, and it could be just personal achievement and recognition, right? So I think this is where capitalism has poisoned, I think, humans, and I think this is what capitalism is destroying us. Suppression of political pluralism, and that can be a problem with communism. Most communist states have become a one party system. This limits free elections, dissent, and independent media. The ideology can tend to merge party and state, and I think this is where you need to have democratic socialism or democratic communism, where you can have multiple parties. We're a communist system, but there's free elections, you can have dissent and have independent media guaranteed, all right? And you can have religion or lack thereof. Limited personal freedoms, it can be a problem. In many historical and current cases, governments restrict freedom of speech, freedom of movement, and religious practices, which I do not agree with. And these restrictions are often justified by protecting the revolution. So they're the ugly in communism. Historical harms documented by scholars. So authoritarianism and repression. So several communist countries became highly authoritarian, including Stalin's USSR, Mao's China, North Korea, Cambodia under the Khmer Rouge. These regimes used, and still use in some cases, secret police, censorship, mass surveillance, and imprisonment of dissidents, and basically killing anyone they don't agree with too. Human rights abuses. Historical records document forced labour camps, political purges, mass executions, famine caused by policy failures. Okay, and cults of personality. Leaders in some communist states become some centralized figures of near religious, well, basically religious authority, which undermines the original, the equal ideas. Economic collapse or severe hardship. So, examples like the Soviet economic collapse, China's Great Leap Forward famine, and North Korea's 1990s famine. These events caused widespread suffering. So, look, communism is a theory that aims for equality and shared resources and elimination of exploitation. So, in general, that is a good thing. But we need to really think of how we're going to do this and keep things equal so that no leader or party becomes a religious or near religious, authority or, ideal. As communism, as implemented historically, has often produced authoritarian governments, economic inefficiency, and human rights abuses. So that is something that, if you're going to communism or socialism, that you need to own and look forward to. Right? I'm a democratic socialist, but I do understand that socialism and communism has been used to harm, and I do not want to do that. So I'm saying we need to learn from all of history, not just communism, capitalism, and everything else, where there's been harm, and try and look at ways, and there must be ways we can do this where everybody is fed, nobody's dying of hunger, everyone's got housing, everyone's got food and electricity, everyone's got access to healthcare, education. There must be ways of doing that in a democratic and responsible way, that we're looking after the planet, we're looking after all the other people, we're looking after all the other animals, we're also innovating and leading forward. So there has to be ways of doing that, and I believe that sincerely. So look, political scientists will often distinguish between the Marxist theories, which in some instances is the ideal, and I don't necessarily agree, Leninist or Mayer states, which I definitely do not agree with, the real world implementation. And the gap between the two is where most of the debates live. So I'm just sort of going through communism. But look, and I want to say again, I'm a democratic socialist. I'm not a communist and I'm not a socialist, but I think there have to be ways of we should seeing people die of starvation and disease and war. That should not be happening. What are ways that we can achieve that, stopping that, equal rights and fair share of resources for everybody? Okay, how do we stop that? Okay, thank you for your time.